take a look at what's going on with Ilya Sorokin. His play has tailed off as of late. We'll also have a full preview of tonight's game at UBS Arena against the Bruins and a whole lot more, all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast. So glad you could join us and be part of the Locked On Islanders family, and thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. We free and available on all platforms. Lots to discuss on today's episode. We'll take a look at Ilya Sorokin. Kind of been slumping a little bit lately. Hasn't been terrible, but hasn't been the same goalie we saw earlier this season and last season. We'll break down what's going on with Ilya Sorokin. Plus, we'll have a full preview of tonight's game as the Islanders return home to face the Boston Bruins at the UBS Arena. And on our Islanders' birthday of the day, a player who was with the Islanders a decade ago, give or take, and is still active in the National Hockey League. So we'll take a look at that and a whole lot more coming up on this episode of the show. If you've got something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like us to talk about on the show, feel free to send us an email. The email address, lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we are happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. You could also follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnIsles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on Twitter at Ice Wars, NYRVSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. And I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So I'll give you instant insight and analysis. And it's always great to interact with Islanders fans, just talk about what's going on and how things are going. So we need to talk a little bit Ilya Sorokin. And it's tough right now. We know Semyon Varlamov remains in Calgary, cannot leave, still hasn't had that negative test. And therefore, Corey Schneider has been called up. He's the emergency backup. But meanwhile, Ilya Sorokin going to be the guy, probably going to play nearly every game until Varley is able to return. And look, I am not going to come out and say to you, I think Ilya Sorokin is the reason the Islanders have been playing poorly lately. He's not, okay? Ilya Sorokin has just not played up to his level that we're accustomed to seeing him play. The early part of the season, when he played, Varlamov was unavailable because he was still recovering from an injury. And what was it, 9 games in a row to start season that Ilya said? He was very good for most of those games. But now, look, in his last 7 starts, Sorokin, a 3.33 goals against average and an .888 save percentage. And those numbers are not going to get it done on a team that struggles to score goals like the New York Islanders struggle to score goals. You need, in the Islanders system, you have to limit the number of quality chances, and you need your goalie to come up with that handful of really big saves when your defense does break down. And you need very strong goaltending over the course of the game. The Islanders haven't gotten that. And when your goals against average is 3.33 and your team is scoring on average a little more than 2 goals a game, that's not a recipe for victory. Now, since January 1st, so that's the last, 6 weeks, the Islanders are 8-8-0. Not terrible, again, but not good enough to make up the ground this team needs to make up in order to get back into the playoff race. We talked about how the Islanders needed to get roughly 2/3 of all the available points after the holiday break for the rest of the season to get to that magic 98-point mark and make the playoffs, give or take. Well, that 67% has now gone up to nearly 75%. The Islanders need to capture 3 out of every 4 points left on the table to get to the magic 98-point mark. And keep in mind, the way things are going, 98 points may not be enough. And they're going to need Ilya Sorokin to shine. And I think part of this for Ilya Sorokin is the grind of an 82-game season. He hasn't experienced that in the National Hockey League just yet. And, last year, 56-game season and limited travel. And this year, all of a sudden, the team has played now, 43 games, 44 games. All of a sudden, he's getting the bulk of the work as Varlamov was hurt. Now Varlamov has COVID. And Sorokin, over the course of the entire season, has played better than Varlamov. He may be hitting a little bit of a wall and probably needs to figure out sort of how to condition himself emotionally and physically to handle this kind of workload. This is the proving ground here and now for Ilya Sorokin to demonstrate to Barry Trotz, Lou Lamoriello, and his teammates that he can handle being the starter and get 60, 55, 60, 65 starts in a season over the course of an NHL campaign. Look, it's a very different situation than what he faced last year, and certainly different than what he faced in the KHL. Here's what Barry Trotz had to say at practice yesterday. I think he's fine. He's a guy he's learning to not have to go on the ice every day, not to have to take 3,000 shots every day. I think he's learning that it is a little more of a grind, so you have to manage that part of it. Matt Martin telling The Athletic this: Sorokin has been a rock for us all season long, even going back to last season. He was unbelievable. I think all goalies look for rhythm in their game, and obviously will lean on him a little bit here. He's definitely up for the challenge. Realistically, right now, it just seems like Sorokin is struggling. And the Islanders are only scoring 2.5 goals in front of him this year. He's, in those last 8 starts, given up 3.33 goals. That's not going to get the job done. And look, every player goes through this down point in the season. And right now, it just seems to me that Ilya Sorokin has hit a little bit of a wall. He's letting in some goals that in the past he wouldn't let in. Some soft goals, not always taking the best angle. He's not playing badly. But for the Islanders system to work with a team that struggles to score the way this team struggles to score, you need really, really good goaltending on a daily basis. And right now, they're getting inconsistent goaltending from Ilya. And with Varlamov unavailable for at least the next few days, and we don't know exactly how long, the Islanders are going to need a little more from Ilya Sorokin in the short term, and we'll see if he's able to do them. When we come back, we'll have a full preview of tonight's big game at the UBS Arena against the team the Islanders are chasing in the playoff race, the Boston Bruins. We'll have a full preview of that We also have our Islanders birthday of the day and a whole lot more still to come on the Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought by your friend Line Football over the season for both pro and college hoops. From odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Olympic Hockey Daily, presented by Locked On NHL. It's a bonus podcast covering all the action in Beijing. You can find it on the Locked On NHL podcast feed. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. So, Islanders tonight at the UBS Arena. Here it is, folks. The team going to chase their 18 points with a few games in hand. And look, they continue their road trip, a 4-game road trip tonight, 7:30 start at the UBS Arena against the Islanders. Here is a situation where this is a Bruins team, a little of controversy lately. Brad Marchand is serving his 6-game suspension. You've got Tuukka Rask, who just came back and then retired when he figured he couldn't really get himself healthy enough to really play at the level he wanted to play at. So there is sort of that little transition, and Boston on the ice has lost 3 of their last 4 games. Now, Boston is a good defensive team. They're 9th in the league at goals against, 21st in goals scored, so they're kind of struggling to get depth scoring. Special teams, though, is where the Bruins excel. They're 7th in the league on the power play at a 25.2% conversion rate, and they're 10th in the league on the PK with an 82.5% success rate. For the season, in 47 games, Boston is 11 games over NHL 500, 27, 16, and 4. The goaltending duo, Linus Ullmark is the starter. Jeremy and now the backup, that now since Rask has retired. Brad Marchand leads the team in points with 49, but right now the leading goal scorer, David Pastrnak, with 24. Patrice Bergeron, Taylor Hall, Charlie McAvoy, Charlie Coyle, some real familiar names up and down this lineup that Islander fans know only well. And the Bruins are a team that's not afraid from their games the rain. Center with Taylor Hall to his David Pastrnak. Coyle is the second line pivot. Trent Frederick, Craig Smith, his wingers, Stud Curtis Lazar is the defensive pairings are the top pair, followed by Matt Gressler and Brandon Lowe. Derek Forbort and Connor Claring and the goaltender are Spanish. And the Islanders they have stopped that first line. Now the fact on is right now, and the fact that dealing with played that team defense, and Sebastian Aho's line zone defense was snuffed to challenge. And here's the other thing about this game: 18 points in tonight's game in relation to pick up 2 points on Boston, not just one. Entertain any remote hopes of making the playoffs. Again, tough to make up 18 points. Also have to pass Columbus and Detroit and Boston to get to that last spot. It's an uphill climb. I don't expect that they'll be able to do it necessarily, but this Islanders team isn't going to quit. And again, I think for the next few days, the 2 home games at least, they're going to keep going like they're trying to make the playoffs. And then if they don't do well these next 2 games, Boston being a big challenge, Montreal being a team that is struggling, then they head west for a few games. That's when I think we'll start to see Lou Lamoriello, if things don't really turn around, start to next what to do at the trade deadline later on in the podcast week, in the coming days and weeks ahead. All right, we've got more to get to on this episode of the Locked On Islanders podcast. We have our Islanders birthday of the day. And more here on the Islanders podcast. It's our birthday today. We want to wish 36th birthday back in 2004. Played his first game for the Islanders in the 2007 season and stayed with the team 2010-2011. 24 goals and 46 points in 2010-2011. And then early in the 2011-2000, he was shipped off to Calgary, later played for Columbus, Pittsburgh, Colorado, Dallas. And this season, he has time to Dallas and the Texas Stars, which is Dallas. He's played 6 games in the NHL this year and has 1 goal. So far, his career is Blake Coleman 9 career NHL games, 330, 53 playoff, 6 goals, 12 points there. And yeah, in 2020, he was in 23 3 playoff games for the Dallas. In the year of Blake Como, we take back to the National College March 2000 Chicago Blackhawks, the visit team, Antti Niemi, the start, while Islanders go with rolling in goal. Fisting handoff lead, Brent Campbell, his 7th. Islanders trailing 1-0, but a minute and a half after that, Blake Como, his 10th from Rob Schremp at 12:16, ties things at 1. Then, with Richard Park off for slashing, Patrick Kane, his 26th from Duncan Keith and Jonathan Taves at 13:19. Islanders trailing 2-1 after the first period. But the second period was all Isles. Blake Como, our Islanders' birthday today, gets his second goal of the game, 11th of the season. Rob Schremp and Mark Streit with the assist at 2:27. And a mere 25 seconds later, John Sim, his night from Richard Park and Dustin Cohn at 2:52. That made it a 3-2 Islanders lead. Richard Park made 4-2 Islanders at the 7:06 mark. Matt Molson and Doug Waite assisting on Park's 7th goal of the year. And then with 18 seconds left in the second period, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Blake Como completes his first NHL hat trick, his 12th of the year. Streit and Andrew McDonald with the assists at 19:42. That made the score 5. And the Blackhawks 2. Chicago got a goal in the third. A power play goal. Kyle Oposo off for holding. Dustin Byfuglien, his 15th from Taves Hayne at 15:43. Final scores 1. Islanders 5 and the Blackhawks 3. And in this game, I'll tell you, I outshot pretty badly. I mean, 44 shots in goal to 20 in favor of Chicago. But Dwayne Rolison, 1 saves in this one. And our Islanders' birthday of the day, Blake Como, 3 goals on 4 shots. He was +3. And all 3 goals coming at even strength. The first career hat trick for Blake Como. He has since one more member of Como is they wish him a happy birthday on Friday. And Como again assigned 2-way Islanders during his tenure. Kind of a must win for the Islanders. Something they need to really bounce back and rebound, because this team's they need to play to win a lot. It doesn't turn around very, very soon. Got to start thinking about next season and what you do as then, rather than maximizing now. You end up being at the trade line of the buyers. I'll explain what that means. Again, probably next week. Get to Locked On Bet. Locked On Bets is hosted by your expert in insight and analysis from and available on all platforms. That does it for episode day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.